"Our mama died this morning and we got nowhere else to go, sir." The words hit harder than a bullet. On the sun-bleached porch of an old ranch in the heart of a dusty western valley, 3 children stood trembling not from cold, but from fear, grief, and the weight of a world too cruel for their small shoulders. Cole McAllister, a reclusive cowboy with hands calloused from regret and silence, hadn't heard his own name spoken by a child in years. He looked into the middle girl's eyes, sharp-guarded and far too old for her age, and without knowing why he answered, "Then you're home now." What he did know was that this moment would crack open a buried past, ignite a storm across the valley, and force him to choose, stay a ghost of the man he once was, or become the father he never got the chance to be. The sun stood still over Copper Creek, burning the dust into the boards of the front porch, like it had every summer since Cole McAllister could remember. Out here, time didn't move so much as it waited for the wheat to rise, the wind to turn, or the past to catch up. Cole sat with his boots propped on a chipped barrel, a whittling knife in one hand, a sliver of cedar in the other. He wasn't carving anything in particular, just keeping his hands busy the way a man does when his heart's been quiet too long. Then came the knock. It was too soft for the wind, too light for a traveler. He squinted toward the door. 3 figures stood framed against the white-hot light. Girls. The oldest couldn't have been more than 14, the youngest maybe 4. They were all skin-bone and sunburned dresses torn at the hem, hair matted by travel. But it was the middle one standing still as a stone who looked him straight in the eye. Her voice didn't shake. "Our mama died this morning and we got nowhere else to go, sir." Cole didn't speak, didn't move. The words hit like a bullet that didn't tear flesh, just memory. The girl blinked once, just once, and in that one blink, something broke in him. He set the knife down slow and stood his boots echoing on the planks. "You hungry?" he asked. The oldest nodded, her throat too dry for words. The youngest clutched a ragged stuffed rabbit to her chest. "Come on in, then," he said. And that was it. No heroism, no grand welcome. Just a door opening at high noon, letting in the heat, and a history he thought he'd buried. Inside the cabin smelled of pine dust and horses. He cleared a bench near the stove, filled 3 glasses with water from the pump, and watched as the girls drank like they hadn't tasted kindness in weeks. "I'm Cole," he said finally. "I'm Millie," the oldest replied. "This is Leah, and that's Ruthie." She gestured to the middle girl, then to the youngest, who was already curling up on a folded blanket like a fawn. "Millie?" he repeated. "You all walked here." She nodded. "Where from?" She hesitated. "Mama didn't want us around folks anymore. Said the law couldn't be trusted. We came from the canyon past the old sawmill. That was a good 10 miles in dry heat." Cole looked at Leah, whose dark eyes watched him like a coyote does a stranger, curious, quiet, ready to bolt. There was silence for a while. Then Millie reached into her satchel. "Mama told us to give you this if anything happened." She handed over a small bundle wrapped in cloth and tied with a blue ribbon. The moment he saw the ribbon, something in his chest shifted. It was the kind Clara used to tie her hair, and there was only one woman besides Clara who knew that. He untied it slowly. Inside, a folded letter, yellowed and creased, and a silver medallion with a pressed wildflower etched in. He didn't read the letter right away, just held it like it might burn or break him. "Your mama's name?" he asked without looking up. "Was it Maggie Rosa's?" Millie nodded. "You knew her?" He nodded, once eyes on the letter. "I did." That night, after the girls fell asleep on makeshift beds with their feet still dusty and hearts still guarded, Cole sat at the kitchen table under a dim oil lamp and opened the letter. "Cole, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth years ago, but I was scared. I trusted you once, and I trust you now maybe more than you deserve. Leah is your daughter." He let the words sit in the silence. "I didn't come back to ruin anything. I came back because I had nowhere else, because I knew you'd keep your promise to Clara that if someone needed a roof, you'd offer it. Leah needs more than that now. She needs her father." Cole folded the letter slow, as if doing it fast might tear it apart. He stared at the lamp for a long time, the light catching the silver medallion, spinning memories like dust in summer air. The next morning, Millie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, already guarding her sisters. "You're not sending us away." He shook his head. "No." She studied him. "Why not?" He sighed. "Because I gave my word, a long time ago, to someone I loved." She nodded like she understood, but Leah didn't say anything. She just stood there watching him. Same sharp jaw, same silent fire. "I ain't good at this," he said quietly to her, being soft. Still no reply, just those eyes. So he added, barely a whisper, "But I reckon he'll learn." Leah turned her face away, but not before he saw the smallest twitch at the corner of her mouth. That evening, Cole stood on the porch again, looking out at the horizon stretching flat and wide. The sky was bleeding into gold and rust, and the heat was finally easing. Behind him, 3 girls slept in a house that hadn't known laughter in years. He touched the letter in his shirt pocket. It rested against his heart like a second pulse. Cole McAllister, who had once lost everything, now had something to lose again, and that terrified him more than any outlaw ever did. But for the first time in a long while, it also made him feel alive. The heat leaned heavy on the land that afternoon. Cicadas screeched from dry fence posts, and the sun painted the dust gold. Inside the ranch house, everything was still, except for the shallow, quiet breaths of 3 girls sitting at the edge of Cole McAllister's wooden floor. He hadn't said much since letting them in. He didn't need to. Silence was how men like him, spokesmen who'd once loved too deeply and lost too much to ever love recklessly again. But then the eldest girl, Millie, reached beneath her damp, dust-covered shawl and pulled out a cloth-wrapped bundle. It was faded blue and tied with a fraying ribbon worn soft by years of being held close. She stood slowly, her small boots scuffing the floor. "Ma said to give this to you," she whispered. "Only if something happened." Cole didn't reach for it right away. His hand hung halfway in the air, trembling slightly. He hadn't seen blue thread like that since Clara, his late wife, used it to mend a tear in her apron on their last real morning together. Magdalena had watched her sew in silence. That was a memory Cole hadn't let out in years. He took the bundle with a nod, careful, reverent, like it might bleed if held too tight. Millie returned to her sisters, curling protectively around the youngest Ruthie, who clung to her eyeless cloth doll like it held the memory of their mother inside it. Cole didn't unwrap the bundle yet. He stood by the window, the package in his hands, the silence thick enough to hear the creak of the rafters. "What was your mother's full name?" he asked, voice barely above a breath. "Magdalena Rosas Millie," answered without looking up. The name knocked the air from him like a kick to the ribs. His jaw tightened. Magdalena, sunlight in her laugh, stubbornness in her walk, and fire in every decision she'd ever made. He had almost loved her once, almost married her until Clara. And then silence swallowed them both. He sat down heavily in Clara's old chair, the wood groaning under his weight. It felt wrong, like trespassing, but he needed to be grounded. The ribbon came undone slowly. Inside, a folded letter yellowed around the edges, and a small silver locket engraved with a daisy. He held the locket first, cold in his palm, familiar. There was a photograph inside, not old, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Magdalena holding a baby with dark curls, staring into the camera with a proud, protective kind of love. His chest tightened, the girl in her arms. She had Leah's eyes. The letter shook in his hands as he opened it. There was no greeting, no "Dear Cole," just truth written in the hand of a woman who'd run out of time. "If you're reading this, I didn't make it. I had no one else to send them to. No one I trusted. Except you. You once stood at Clara's grave and swore you'd never turn away a soul in need. Well, they need you. They're not just orphans, Cole. One of them, Leah, she's yours. I wanted to tell you years ago, but pride got in the way. Maybe fear, too. I thought I could protect her better without you. I was wrong. If Zeke Ward comes around claiming debt, don't believe him. He's got papers but no soul. The locket's your proof. There's more if you're brave enough to dig." Cole stared at the page for a long time. The past had always haunted him, Clara's death, the child they'd lost, the life he'd built on silence and soil. But now it wasn't just ghosts knocking at his door. It was blood. He looked toward the kitchen where Leah now sat beside her sisters, the edge of her dirty dress brushing the floor. She looked like him. He had never let himself see it before. He folded the letter slow and deliberate like a ritual and slid it into the inside pocket of his vest. Then he held the locket in his hand one last time, before tucking it into the same place. No tears. Not yet. From the porch, a horse whinnied. The breeze pushed dust through the open doorway. The air smelled like summer and old hay, but suddenly it was as heavy as a thunderstorm. A knock. Sharp, arrogant. Cole didn't ask who it was. He already knew. Zeke Ward walked in without waiting for permission. He wore a brown vest too fine for the desert heat, and a smile too crooked to trust. "Well, well," Ward drawled, glancing at the girls. "Didn't take you long to build a new little family, McAllister." Cole stood slow. "What do you want?" Zeke Ward held up a folded paper between two fingers like a stage magician. "Magdalena owed me. Back rent, supplies, some interest. Am here to collect." He turned his eyes toward Millie, then Leah. 3 girls. Strong backs, good hands. "I'll take one. Hell, take all 3 as payment." Millie reached for Leah's hand. "You walk out of here right now," Cole said, voice so low it sounded like gravel breaking. "Before I forget, I gave up violence when Clara died." Ward smirked. "Oh, he'll leave. But he'll be back with law on paper and names to burn. You think this town cares about orphans? You think they'll stand for you when I own the land under your feet?" He turned at the door, but Cole's next words stopped him cold. "She's mine." Ward froze. What Cole didn't move. Leah, she's mine by blood. The other 2, by choice. But all 3 are under this roof now, and if you so much as breathe near them again, I'll bury your threats in the same dirt you're trying to steal. Ward's smirk cracked just for a second. He left without another word. Cole shut the door, leaned against it for a breath that refused to come. In the corner, Leah looked up. What did he mean? Cole met her eyes, and something passed between them, quiet and terrifying. "He'll tell you," he said. "Soon." She nodded once slow, then turned back toward her sisters. As the cicadas kept singing outside, Cole stepped forward and did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He knelt beside a child and stayed there, silent, but finally present. The morning sun spilled across the porch in thin golden slices. Dust swirled like ghosts in the quiet corners of the house, tracing circles in the air above a worn rocking chair that hadn't moved in years. Inside the house held its breath. Cole McAllister stood at the edge of the kitchen, staring at the cracked enamel sink. His coffee sat untouched. The silence pressed in, until it was broken by a creak from the hallway. Small footsteps, then 3 sets. Hesitant light, almost afraid to disturb the air that didn't yet feel like theirs. He turned. Leah was first. Her dark eyes scanned everything like a stray animal that'd been hunted before. Behind her came Ruthie, dragging her threadbare doll by the foot. And last was Millie Amelia, he remembered. Her chin was up. She carried that same quiet that Clara used to wear when she knew the storm hadn't passed. "Coffee's bitter," he said, as if it were a greeting. Leah looked at the tin mug. "Mama used to drink it black. Said life didn't offer sugar unless you earned it." Cole's jaw tightened. She was right. No one sat. They lingered by the doorway, unsure of how to belong in a place that still smelled like saddle soap wood smoke and a man who'd been alone too long. "Breakfast?" he asked. Millie nodded. Ruthie climbed into a chair like she was climbing a mountain. He didn't know what to say as he cracked eggs. He hadn't cooked for anyone since Clara. The skillet sizzled loud in the quiet, louder than he liked. "How'd she die?" Cole asked softly, not turning. Leah's voice barely rose above the oil's hiss. "Coughing. Couldn't breathe. She wouldn't go to the doctor." Said we had to save the money, Ward Millie added sharp. She owed him. Medicine was part of the debt. Cole didn't answer. The eggs cooked a minute too long. The toast burned at the edges. Still, no one complained. When he set the food down, Ruthie's eyes lit up and she whispered, "Smells like Sundays." Leah looked at her plate, then up at Cole. "Why'd you take us in? You didn't even know us." He sat slowly, elbows on the table. The wood groaned beneath him. "Didn't need to know you. I knew your mama. Long time ago." Millie watched him like a hawk. "Were you the man she cried about?" That hit harder than he expected. He swallowed, but the coffee stuck in his throat. "I was the man who walked away," he said. Silence hung between them like an old sheet drying in the sun. Tired, transparent, full of things unsaid. They fell into a rhythm over the next few days. The house grew used to the sound of girls' doors clicking shut, spoons against bowls, Ruthie singing to her doll like it was a baby. Cole didn't say much, but he noticed. He noticed how Leah walked the perimeter at dusk like she was guarding something. How Millie folded the same dish towel over the stove handle every morning. How Ruthie left her boots by the wrong door every single time. He sharpened tools just for the sound. He fixed hinges that hadn't squeaked in years. He left clean shirts folded on the hallway table without a word. But at night alone in the barn, he sat on the old hay bale and read the letter again. Magdalena's words burned like desert sun. "Lies yours. You didn't know, but you should. She has your eyes, your silence too." He folded it slowly, like it might bleed. One afternoon, as the sun drew long stripes across the porch, Sheriff Jeb Carter rode up, slow, dust clinging to his sleeves. He didn't dismount. "Heard Ward's been sniffing around. Says those girls are property now, payment owed." Cole leaned on the rail. "They ain't property, they're children." "Don't matter to Zeke. You know how he operates?" "I know." Sheriff looked away, embarrassed. "Just be smart, Cole. Law's tricky with orphans. No deed know will it gets messy." Cole didn't answer, just watched the sheriff ride away into the heat. Behind him, the screen door creaked. "You gonna let him take us?" Millie asked, arms crossed. "No," Cole said. She stared at him hard. "You sure?" He turned his voice low and worn. "I've walked away once. I won't do it again." Later that evening, Millie found a small crate on the back porch. Inside, 3 polished canteens, a new comb, a wooden slingshot, and a folded note. "If you're gonna stay, you need tools. And if you're gonna fight, you need truth." She held the slingshot like it was made of gold, then looked out across the field where Cole was walking fence lines with Leah. By the 4th day, the air felt different. The house had breath again. Leah asked to help collect eggs. Millie started keeping a ledger of feed and supplies like Clara used to. Ruthie made up songs about horses and sang them to the chickens. And Cole stopped sleeping in the barn. One night the sky stretched out quiet and endless. The girls lay on the porch under the stars. Ruthie fell asleep first. "Do you miss her?" Leah asked. Cole didn't move, just looked up at the constellations. "Every day, even if you left." He nodded. "Especially because I left." She turned her face toward him. "Why didn't you come back?" He closed his eyes. "Because I thought silence was safer than the truth. And I was wrong." She didn't reply, but she shifted closer. Inside the house, the rocking chair moved just slightly in the breeze. The kettle whistled low. And for the first time in years, Cole left the front door open through the night like a man who believed that what had once been broken might still come home. The sun had dropped behind the ridge, leaving behind a golden hush that turned Copper Creek into a ghost of itself. Wind Hill, just beyond the far pasture, rose like a tired shoulder against the burning sky. Dust floated in the stillness. Cole McAllister stood at the fence line, one boot resting on the lowest rail, watching the horizon like it might confess something if he stared long enough. Inside the house, the girls had gone quiet. Ruthie napped with her arms wrapped around a threadbare doll. Millie scrubbed the same corner of the table for the 3rd time. Leah sat at the windowsill, legs crossed, chin on knees, eyes locked on the distance, on the silence. Cole hadn't told them everything. Not yet. The medallion was still in his coat pocket, warm from the summer heat and from being pressed against his chest for days now. He hadn't read Magdalena's letter again. He didn't need to. The words were carved into him, but the quiet didn't last. The sound came slow wheels on gravel-heavy hooves. A wagon. Cole tensed fingers curling against the splintered wood. He watched dust rise like a warning. By the time he saw the wide-brimmed hat and the glint of metal on the man's belt, he knew exactly who it was. Ezekiel Ward always arrived like thunder before the storm. He didn't stop at the gate. He drove straight up the path, uninvited. Typical. The wheels groaned as the horses drew up beside the porch. The wagon was too fine for ranch work-polished gleaming. The kind of thing a man rides when he thinks everything he sees belongs to him. Cole didn't move. Ward stepped down with a clatterboot striking the porch like hammers. He tipped his hat not in greeting but in mockery. His smile was clean, white cold. "Evenin', McAllister," he said. "Mighty domestic of you these days." Cole stayed quiet. Ward's eyes swept the yard, the clothesline, the faint laughter of Ruthie from inside. "Heard a rumor. Said you're harboring some strays." Cole shifted just enough to show he was listening. Ward took a step closer. "One of 'em, Millie, I believe, is tied to a debt. Her mama owed me, and unless you're suddenly in the charity business, I'd say that makes her property." Cole's voice came slow, quiet. "You speak about children like you're buying livestock." Ward's smirk didn't waver. "I speak about contracts, signed and unpaid. You know how this works, Cole. You've seen this valley long enough to know it's the paper that decides who eats and who begs." Cole's hand twitched near his hip, not for his gun, but for steadiness. "You think fear'll get you in this house?" Ward stepped up until they were chest to chest. "Fear, no. I think facts will. See, Magdalena left behind more than memories. She left ink. She bought medicine, bread. She promised repayment." A pause. Then a blade hidden in silk. She promised with her daughter. Inside the house, the screen door creaked softly. Leah had stepped out barefoot, eyes fierce. She'd heard. Cole didn't turn to her. He didn't dare. But something cracked in his chest. "She was dying," Cole said low. "You called that a deal," Ward leaned in. "I call it leverage." His voice dropped to a whisper only Cole could hear. "We both know one of those girls is yours. That's why you're twitchy. But blood don't pay debts. Contracts do." A slow breath passed between them. The dust swirled at their boots. Ward stepped back and smiled like a man who'd already won. "He'll return in 2 days," he said. "You can pay me off in coin cattle or the girl. If I don't see one of 'em, I'll take all 3. He turned, climbed into his wagon, and flicked the reins without another word. Cole watched the dust chase after him. The girls didn't speak that night. They didn't have to. Leah sat by the firearms, wrapped tight around herself, a question burning in her eyes she couldn't bring herself to ask. Cole knelt beside her and placed the medallion into her hands. "Your mama. She once asked me for something I didn't understand. I do now." Leah opened it slowly, found the picture, Magdalena holding a baby with dark curls. "She told me you'd come," Leah said, voice hoarse. "If everything went wrong," she said, to find the man who kept his promises. Cole blinked hard. "I should've come sooner." Millie stood at the doorway listening. "What are we gonna do?" Cole straightened slowly. "We stay. We fight clean." Ruthie from behind the table whispered, "Will he take us?" "No," Cole said. "Not while I've still got breath." The girls looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a cowboy, not a ghost of a man who lost too much, but someone who still had something left to give. Someone who would never run again. Outside, the moon rose over Wind Hill, and the shadows it cast no longer scared them. They'd seen worse. And now they had each other. The attic wasn't meant for summer. It baked beneath the tin roof, filled with the scent of dry cotton, old saddle soap, and time like a place that had stopped breathing years ago. Cole McAllister rarely climbed those stairs. Whatever he hadn't said to Clara before she died, he didn't want to find it waiting up there in her handwriting. But Leah had gone up looking for Ruthie's missing doll and hadn't come down. He followed the sound of her soft movements, boxes shifting, wood creaking, until he found her sitting on a faded trunk, turning a weathered leather-bound book in her lap. She didn't look up. "I didn't mean to snoop," she said. Her voice was tight. It had her name on it, Clara McAllister. Cole's throat closed up. That name said by a child born of another woman stung more than he expected. "I figured if she lived here, I ought to know who she was," Leah added. He nodded because words were suddenly a tall mountain. "Did you love her?" she asked quietly. "I did." His voice came out low, dry. "With everything I had left." She flipped a page slow. "And did she love you knowing about my mama?" Now Cole sat down, careful not to disturb the dust gathered like a hush around them. "She knew more than I thought," he said, "and she forgave more than I deserved." Leah handed him the diary without a word. It was open to a page near the end, dated 5 months before Clara died. April 15th. Magdalena came today. She brought Leah. She didn't have to say what she needed. I saw it in her hands, her eyes. She asked me if I would love the child if anything ever happened to her. I told her the truth, I already do. I know Leah carries part of Cole, and that's not something I fear. It's something I understand. I gave her the blue thread, the one from our wedding quilt. She said she'd stitch it into a letter for him. I don't know how long I have. But I do know this love is more than memory or promises. It's what you choose to carry, even when it weighs heavy. Clara. Cole didn't realize he was shaking until Leah gently took the book back and closed it. "You gonna yell at me?" she asked, not quite defiant, but bracing. "No," he said. "I'm glad you read it. She'd want you to." Leah swallowed hard. She sounds like she was kind. She was the kind of woman who loved quiet things, wildflowers, skittish horses. Me? Even after what you did, he didn't dodge it. Especially after. They sat in silence. Dust floated like tired angels in the light from the high window. Then Leah spoke again, quieter this time. She raised me to believe people keep their word. But she also taught me not everyone does. I broke things I can't mend, Leah. I can't change that. But you can choose now, she said. That's what Clara wrote, what you carry. Cole met her eyes. What do you want from me? I don't know, she whispered. I don't want to hate you, but I don't know how to let you in either. The attic groaned under its own weight. Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hat in hand. I never meant to leave her alone, he said. Magdalena. I was a coward. I thought staying out of her life was the right thing, but it was just easier. He looked at Leah, eyes bloodshot from dust and sorrow. I don't deserve you calling me anything but Cole. But if one day you feel like saying something else, he'll be here. I won't walk away again. Downstairs, a screen door slammed. Then came the voice he'd hoped to avoid for weeks. McAllister. It was Ward. Cole stood fast and stiff. Leah followed. They descended the stairs into the rising heat and stepped out onto the porch. Ward stood beside his horse, a folded paper in hand, and a smirk curled like a snake. I hear you're storing someone else's property. You hear too much, Cole muttered. This says Magdalena owed me, Ward said, waving the paper, and she promised to settle it with land, livestock, or labor. He tilted his head toward the house. I figure 3 girls could do a lot of washing, sewing, whatever else a lonely cowboy might be needing. Leah clenched her fists behind Cole. You're filth, she spat. Ward smiled, didn't flinch. I'm a businessman, and she was poor. Cole stepped down off the porch, slow and deliberate. The air between them thickened. You listen close, Ward, he said, voice low and sharp. You lay a hand or a word on those girls again, I'll make sure your shadow never finds the ground. Ward's smile cracked just a bit. Big talk, old man. Cole reached into his shirt and pulled out the medallion. This proves she was mine, by blood. That makes your paper worth less than horse dung in the sun. He stepped forward until only inches separated them. You want this land, you file through the law, but you so much as breathe near them again. His hand hovered over the butt of his revolver, just enough for Ward to see it. We won't be talking next time. Ward took one long look at Cole, then at Leah standing tall behind him, her chin high like she wasn't 14, but forged from fire and blood. He snorted. You'll regret this. Cole didn't blink. Already did. This time him finishing it. Ward mounted up and rode off without another word. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods. The sun shifted westward. Leah stepped up beside Cole. For a while they didn't say anything. Then she asked so quietly he almost missed it. Do you think Clara would have liked me? He stared at the horizon. No, he said, voice cracked with love. She would have loved you. And for the first time, Leah leaned her head gently against his side. Not a word more. Just that. And it was enough. The wind had turned strange that night. It didn't howl, didn't sing like it usually did along the fence posts of Copper Creek. It just stilled, held its breath. Cole McAllister stood on the porch with a kerosene lamp in his left hand, his right resting near the shotgun he hadn't touched in years. Behind him, the wooden house creaked softly, the way it always did when something wasn't right. Inside, the girls slept, or so he hoped. He hadn't told them about the note, the one nailed into the barn door with a rusted knife. Just 6 words carved in block letters, bring the papers or the fire spreads. He thought about lighting a cigar, but his hands were shaking. Then it came, the faintest snap of twigs. Not animals. Too slow. Too careful. He set the lamp down and stepped off the porch, boots crushing dry dirt. A hawk cried somewhere in the distance, or maybe it was just his own heartbeat screaming in his ears. Behind the stable, 2 shadows moved. Stop right there, Cole said, voice low, tight. The figures froze but didn't step back. One of them stepped forward instead. Clayton Briggs, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed, and just as mean as his father had been. His rifle was slung over one shoulder lazily, like he was out for a stroll and not trespassing on another man's land in the dead of night. Well, if it ain't the lonely cowboy playing house, Clayton smirked. Didn't peg you for the fatherly type, Cole. Cole didn't answer. His fingers flexed along the smooth, worn wood of the shotgun. The second Manaliner figure, nervous, hung back. Younger. Cole recognized him too. One of Ward's hired boys. Not cruel by nature, but weak enough to follow orders. You're here to burn what's left, Cole asked. Clayton grinned, all teeth and no warmth. Just a little reminder, that's all. Ward sends his regards. Says you've been forgetting who holds the paper on this valley. Cole stepped forward until they were barely 10 feet apart. There are children sleeping in that house, he said, voice tight, with something deeper than rage. One of them still has burn marks on her hands from the last fire. Clayton shrugged. Then maybe you ought to teach them to stay out of grown folks' business? A long silence settled between them. Cole looked at the boy behind Clayton. His name was Jesse. Cole remembered that No had helped fix a water pump last summer, hadn't said much, just worked with quiet eyes. You got a sister, Jesse? Cole asked, not taking his eyes off him. Jesse blinked. Yeah. Would you let a man like him walk into her home in the dark? Jesse looked away. Clayton barked a short laugh. You always were a sentimental bastard, Cole. Cole lowered the shotgun just slightly. His voice changed. Lower, now rougher. I buried my wife on this land. I raised horses here, watched my hands crack open trying to build something that could outlive me. Then one day 3 girls came to my door and told me their mama died. That she said my name before she went. His voice trembled but didn't break. I made a promise once, and I failed. But I won't fail again. Clayton's smile twisted into something colder. You think this is about some dead woman and a few brats? Hell, Cole, this is business. Ward owns the note. Hallen wants your water. And you, he jabbed a finger forward. You're just a man who doesn't know when to quit. I know exactly when, Cole said. And it sure as hell ain't tonight. In the next second, everything moved. Jesse stepped forward, eyes wide, arm half raised as if to stop Clayton. Too late. Clayton lifted the rifle. Not to aim, just to intimidate. And then light. A sudden flash from the porch. The lamp had been moved. Step away from my father, it was Leah. Her voice cracked the night wide open. She stood barefoot on the porch, her face lit by the flame eyes blazing with something ancient and unbroken. Clayton blinked. Cole stepped in. In one motion, he struck the rifle down, kicked dirt in Clayton's direction, and pinned him with the barrel of his shotgun, one hand trembling with fury. "I'm only gonna say this once," Cole said, breath-heaving. "You show up again, I won't ask questions. I won't tell stories. He'll dig 2 graves in the morning, one for you and one for the man who sent you." Jesse dropped his weapon. Clayton's smile was gone, replaced by something else. Not fear. Contempt. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Ward, don't forget. And Hallen, don't forgive." Cole leaned in. "Let them come, but next time don't bring fire. Bring a preacher." Clayton turned and left, dragging Jesse by the sleeve. Leah was still standing on the porch when Cole looked up. He wanted to yell, to tell her she should have stayed inside, but she was already trembling. Not from fear, but from the weight of it all. "I heard them," she whispered. "I was awake." Cole nodded, swallowing hard. "I didn't mean for you to, I had to," she interrupted. "I had to see if you'd still stand for us even when no one else would." He walked to the porch, climbed the steps slow. Careful. "I failed your mother once," he said, voice hoarse. "I can't make that right, but I can be better now. I want to be." Leah looked at him. Then wordlessly she reached out and took his calloused hand. It was rough, cracked, strong. She didn't let go. And in that gesture the fire was over. The fear was quiet. The night had bent but hadn't broken. The sun was already high when Cole McAllister saddled up Blue. The old stallion twitched his ears uneasy from the restless night and the smoke that had soaked the air. Behind them, the barn still stood, though charred and half-collapsed like a wounded soldier refusing to fall. Leah sat on the porch steps, braiding straw into a loose coil. Her eyes followed Cole, but she didn't speak. Amelia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, as if holding something in. Ruthie played in the dust with a spoon and a rock, humming a broken lullaby. It was Amelia who finally asked, "Where are we going?" Cole looked at her, then toward the ridge. "Your mama had a cabin out near Split Rock Creek. Said she kept things hidden there. We're going to find 'em." Amelia didn't nod, didn't smile. She just said, "I'll come with you," and Cole didn't argue. They rode in silence for a long time. The trail was rough-pocked by summer storms and dried ruts. Junipers scraped their boots. Overhead buzzards wheeled in the heat. Cole didn't talk much on rides like these. The land did enough talking, but his chest burned with the weight of something more than heat. He remembered Magdalena's hands thin, strong, always smelling of wild mint. He remembered the way she used to laugh without sound, just the shaking of her shoulders. And he remembered her eyes the day she left carrying Leah on her hip, saying she'd figure it out. He never asked what needed figuring. The cabin was where he remembered it, though nature had started to reclaim her. Ivy clawed up one side. The windows were cracked. A bat darted out when they opened the door. Inside it smelled of dust and lavender. There were still dishes on the shelf, a blanket folded neatly, a rocking chair facing west. She lived like she was waiting. Amelia said softly, brushing her hand over the table. Cole bent down near the old iron stove and pulled back the hearth brick. Behind it, a hollow, and in it, a bundle wrapped in oilskin. He sat on the floor, unwrapping it with care. Inside, a small leather ledger, a stack of letters, a tin box sealed with wax, and a folded note with his name. "Cole, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Maybe I left too much unsaid, or maybe I said it all in the silence. I kept track of everything, every dollar Ward squeezed out of me, every jar of preserves he marked up threefold. He never gave receipts. He knew I'd never have a voice louder than his. But I knew you would. And there's something more, something I never told you in full. You know about Leah, but you don't know about Amelia. She's not mine, not by blood, but I chose her. I took her in when I found her by the canyon wrapped in a blanket and a bruise. No one came looking. No one asked, and she never spoke of it. If you read this, don't let anyone tell her she don't belong. She belongs to you now." Cole swallowed hard. "Damn you, Maggie," he whispered. "You always did leave me carrying your fire." "What's in the book?" Amelia asked behind him. He turned, showed her the ledger. Neatly written rows, jars of honey sacks of flower medicine marked up tripled, sometimes more. And notes from other names, Tom Whitaker, Ella Green, the Santiago family. "He did this to everybody," Amelia said. Her voice didn't shake, but her fists clenched. Cole nodded. "And we're gonna show it." They rode back faster. The sun was dipping low, bleeding red over the plains. At the ranch, Reverend Graham and Frank O'Reilly were already waiting on the porch called by Silas. Cole laid the papers on the table like playing cards in a showdown. Reverend Graham's weathered fingers traced the numbers. "He's a snake. He's got men with rifles, but not with truth." O'Reilly held up the ledger. "I can get this printed in Dry Gulch, front page, by Monday." Cole nodded. "Do it." Amelia spoke not as a child, but as someone born from fire. He said Mama owed him. He looked at us like coins, like things. Frank looked to Cole. "You ready for what comes next? When you strip a man like Ward of Power, he don't go quiet." Cole's voice was flat. "I'm not after quiet, I'm after clean." That night, Leah sat by the fire with her medallion open. Inside was the faded photo, Magdalena holding her. The same eyes, the same mouth. Was she scared? Leah asked. Cole sat beside her boots, dusty voice low. "Yeah, but she was brave anyway. That's what counts." Leah turned to him. "Are you scared?" He smiled faintly. "More than I ever been, but not of them. I'm scared of failing you girls, of not saying what I should have said years ago." Amelia stood in the doorway holding the letter. "You didn't fail. She trusted you. So do we." Cole looked up at her, then at Leah, and whispered the promise he'd never dared say aloud until now. "You're my girls. All of you. And I ain't letting anyone take that from us." No one spoke after that. But in the stillness, a vow took root, firm and quiet. And outside, the wind began to shift. The sun had risen hot that Sunday morning, casting long shadows across the parched red earth of Copper Creek. Dust hung in the air like unspoken words. Inside the small white chapel, the wooden pews creaked under the weight of a town holding its breath. Cole McAllister sat near the back. He'd come early not for piety but for resolve. His hat rested on his knee hands, clenched around it like a prayer. Beside him, Leah sat stiffly in a borrowed dress too big for her. Amelia, a seat away with Ruthie curled into her shoulder, half asleep. Their presence alone had stirred whisper-slow murmurs like dry leaves scraping across the floorboards. Some faces turned with soft sympathy. Others looked away. Up front, Reverend Elijah Graham stood silent behind the pulpit. His fingers wrapped around the Bible, not reading from it. His eyes scanned the congregation, some familiar, some fidgeting, but all waiting. Ward sat smug in the third row, flanked by two men dressed like law, but smelling like hired hands. His boots were polished, his collar stiff. A faint smile twitched at the corner of his lips when he caught Cole's eye. The Reverend cleared his throat, but it wasn't scripture that left his mouth. "Today I won't speak of sin or salvation, not in the usual sense." A few brows lifted. Someone coughed. "Instead, I'll speak of conscience." He let the words settle thick as heat. "Some of you may know that Mr. McAllister took in 3 girls not long ago. They arrived in the middle of hardship. They came with nothing, and I reckon that made them look disposable to some." He paused, gaze fixed on Ward, though he never spoke the name. "But I tell you now, no one in this valley is worth less than another, no matter how little they own or how quiet their voice." Cole looked down. His knuckles were white. Leah's hand slid across the wooden bench resting atop his. He didn't look at her, but he didn't pull away. The Reverend stepped out from behind the pulpit. "A man came to me this week with a set of papers. Ledger's letters, proof. Proof, he repeated, that debts were rigged, that interest was tripled, that families were held hostage by one man's greed. Now the tension snapped like a drawn string. Some gasped. A woman in the front row closed her eyes and whispered something under her breath. Ward stood. "You want to speak about debts, Reverend? Speak the whole truth. Magdalena Rosas owed me more than just coin. That woman used her girls as barter. Ain't no one in this room that didn't know she was desperate." His voice echoed cold and sharp. "And as for that middle one, Leah, she's mine now by every law that governs claim and debt. That man," he pointed back at Cole, "he's keeping stolen goods, and I intend to take it back." Gasps turned to outrage. Cole stood slowly. His voice, when it came, was steady like the hum of a storm just beyond the hill. "She's not a debt, Ward. She's my daughter." Silence. Even the Reverend looked stunned. Cole stepped forward, hat in hand, the medallion hanging from a chain around his fingers. "Magdalena wrote me before she died. Told me what she couldn't say face to face. I failed them once. But not again. Not this time." His voice cracked but didn't break. "You think you can put a price on people, Ward? You think paper makes you righteous? But this valley was built on handshakes, not signatures. On folks feeding each other when cattle were lost and rain didn't come. You think you own the land, but you don't own us." For a moment nothing moved. Then someone stood. It was Miss Dorothea Lane. "I've read those papers too, and I taught half the folks in this chapel how to read. I say they're real." Then Silas Boone stood. "Ward offered to buy my pasture last spring. Told me if I didn't sell my well might dry. I didn't sell. That well's been poisoned since June." Now murmurs became voices. Dozens rose. Frank O'Reilly waved a folded paper. "Dry Gulch Tribune's running it next week. Front page. Folks out there will know what you've done." Ward turned pale, then red. He opened his mouth, but the Reverend stepped forward and raised his hand. "No more. Mr. Ward, you are welcome in this house if you seek to make peace, but if you come with threats, you best leave now, and I suggest you think long and hard about which one you're doing." Ward stared at the Reverend, then at the sea of eyes now against him. He turned face like iron and marched out the door. His boots echoed one last time before the heavy door swung shut. Inside, quiet returned. Not silence, but peace. Leah leaned closer to Cole and whispered, "Did you mean it?" He looked at her. Every word. Her eyes, usually guarded, filled but didn't spill. She nodded once, then leaned her head against his arm. Amelia reached across and held Ruthie's hand. The little girl was smiling in her sleep. The Reverend voice, now soft, returned to the pulpit. "This morning we were reminded of something old, something deeper than any law, that a home is not built from wood or deed or name, but from choice, from truth, from who we protect when no one else will." Cole didn't say a word as they filed out with the others, but his spine was straighter, his stride steadier. Outside, the sun had begun to shift west. It was still hot, but the heat no longer felt hollow. That afternoon, Copper Creek didn't just leave the chapel with gossip or scandal. They left changed, because someone stood, because someone stayed, because someone chose to call a child his own, not by blood, but by heart. And in the wide silence that followed, the land itself seemed to breathe. It was the kind of summer dusk that painted everything gold. Even the dust in the air felt holy. But in a corner office in Dry Gulch, the light did not reach far. Heavy velvet curtains dimmed the windows. Everything inside was quiet, too quiet for a man like Ezekiel Ward, who had built his power on volume and fear. He sat stiffly in a high-backed leather chair, sweat gathering beneath the collar of his vest. Across from him, a man stirred sugar into his coffee with the ease of someone used to taking what he wanted. Walter Halen wore a linen vest, gold watch chain, and the look of a man who hadn't lost a negotiation in years. "I gave you land to leverage," Ward Halen said softly. "Water rights and time. What you brought me is scandal and ash." Ward didn't speak. He only licked his lips, eyes fixed on the line of sweat running down his glass. "The people are riled," Halen continued. Letters are coming in. A churchman spoke against you. I read about it in a Baptist newsletter. Imagine that a cowboy rebellion sparked by a girl with a rag doll. She ain't just any girl. Ward said, his voice thin. She's McAllister's blood. Halen finally looked up. His eyes were gray, nearly colorless like winter mud. You didn't think to tell me that before. Ward hesitated. I thought I could use it. Pressure him. Take the land once he cracked. You thought wrong. There was silence again. The air in the room pressed like a storm about to break. Halen rose and walked to the window. Through a slit in the curtains, he watched a cart creak by, pulled by a mule too old for its own work. His voice, when it came, was low and final. You'll fix this. You'll bring him to heel. If not, you'll answer to more than me. Ward's jaw worked silently for a second. Then, what if I take the girl? He'd fold. That cowboy bleeds from the heart. Halen turned slowly. And you think a man who stands against fire and mob will fall to threats against his child? He's just one man. No, Halen said. He's one man with the town behind him. You, on the other hand, are one man with fire behind you, and smoke trails lead somewhere. Ezekiel. He walked over to the desk, leaned in close enough for Ward to smell his breath, mint and menace. If I burn my name on this mess, I'll burn yours out of it first. And then, without another word, Halen turned, straightened his cuffs, and left the room. That night, Ward drank. He didn't go to the saloon, not anymore. Too many whispers, too many eyes pretending not to see him walk in and hoping he'd walk out broken. Instead, he sat in the back room of his own store, surrounded by boxes of flour and ledgers stained with tobacco spit. He stared at a map pinned to the wall, McAllister's ranch marked with a red cross. That land, that goddamn stubborn man, that girl. His fingers shook as he traced the creek that ran underneath. You should have sold me the land, Cole, he muttered. You should have taken the money and walked away. He thought of Leah's eyes, her mother's eyes, and he thought of Magdalena, how she'd looked at him that day in town. Not with fear, but pity, like he was already halfway buried. He poured himself another drink. Across the valley, the air was softer. The crickets had begun their song, and the porch light at the McAllister place flickered like a heartbeat in the dark. Cole sat in the shadows, sharpening a small pocket knife. Not because it needed sharpening, but because his hands needed something to do. Leah was asleep inside. Amelia had taken Ruthie to help Dorothea with the baking. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that made you remember things you didn't want to. Magdalena barefoot in the river, her laugh, her silence, her letter. He hadn't told Leah everything. Not yet. He would someday, when the dust settled, if it ever did. But what haunted him more than the silence was the idea that someone like Ward might try to use Leah to crack him open. He already had. He looked out over the fields, sweat running down his back, even in the evening air. The land was dry. Too dry for July. They needed the water. But he wasn't about to sell the land to save the well and lose the soul of the place in the process. I'd rather let it all turn to dust, he muttered. Behind him, footsteps on the porch. Slow, familiar. Silas. Got word from Frank, the old man said, settling into the chair beside him. Halen was in town. Cole didn't look up. Silas continued. He met with Ward. Folks say he's pulling out. Too much noise. He don't like his name dragged through mud. Cole nodded, said nothing, but Silas added, before he left, he gave Ward one last shot. Cole's jaw clenched. Take something he can't afford to lose, Silas said quietly. That's what men like Halen do. When they can't buy you, they'll break you. Cole exhaled slowly. Put the knife down. I won't let them take her. Silas nodded, gaze steady. You might not have a choice. I do, Cole said. His voice was soft, but there was iron beneath. I didn't get to save her mama, but he'll stand in front of that girl if it cost me every drop I've got left. Silas looked at him long and quiet. You already are. Cole stared out into the dark. The porch creaked. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried. He didn't say another word. But the way he reached for the rifle leaning against the wall, slow, deliberate, steady, said everything. Tomorrow would come, and when it did, he'd be ready. The night in Copper Creek had a strange stillness to it, the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but waiting. Amelia Millie Harper felt it in her bones as she stood near the basement hatch of the abandoned schoolhouse, her hand curled tightly around Leah's wrist. Beside them, little Ruthie clutched her ragged doll eyes wide in the dark. Miss Dorothea lay asleep on a makeshift cot, a cast-iron skillet within reach. They'd hidden here before, but tonight felt different. It wasn't the wind that woke her, it was the absence of it. Then came the sound, a soft thud above the ceiling boards. A footstep, not Silas, not Fernandez. Millie reached slowly for the oil lamp but didn't light it. Instead, she slipped toward the hatch that led to the dry creek bed behind the school, once used by children playing cowboys and Indians. Now it might be their only way out. Another footstep. Heavier, closer. She whispered without turning Leah wake Miss Dorothea. Quiet. Leah nodded once and crouched down. Millie eased open the hatch. The hinges creaked like an old man's back. She winced. Two shadows moved outside the tunnel. Then from above, a voice low, frightened male. Don't scream. I'm not here to hurt you. A boy slid down the stairs, hands raised, dusty blonde around Millie's age, his eyes frightened and familiar. Elas, she whispered. My father's upstairs with another man. They came for Leah, he said, breath shaking. They think she's the weak spot. That McAllister will trade anything for her. Behind her, Leah stiffened. They'll be here any second, he added. You have to run, now. Millie didn't hesitate. Wake up, Ruthie. You go out the hatch. Follow the dry creek till the oak split in two. Then keep north. What about you, Leah's voice was almost a growl. He'll buy you time. No, I said go. Millie snapped. We don't all get to be safe. Just go while there's still time to be brave. She gave Leah a shove softer than it seemed, then turned and ran, straight up the steps. As she reached the hallway, the moonlight cut across the broken windows, laying out pale strips of silver and shadow. She saw them before they saw her, Clayton Briggs, and a man with a snake tattoo curling from jaw to collar. There she is, Clayton barked. Millie didn't run. Not at first. She met his eyes, his own son's eyes, and said, You're hunting children now, Mr. Briggs, real proud work. Your smart mouth's gonna land you right where your dead mama's at, he snarled. That did it. She bolted. The front door slammed open as she darted down the schoolhouse corridor. Behind her, boots pounded the warped floorboards. She swerved down a side hallway, kicked open the back door, and ran straight into the field. Dry grass slapped her legs. Burrs snagged her skirt. The night air burned in her throat like smoke. Somewhere behind, Clayton yelled, Bring her down, don't kill her. A shot cracked. A bullet hit the fence post inches from her shoulder. Splinters flew. She ducked, turned sharp left, and leapt into the creek bed. Her ankle twisted on a stone, but she bit down her scream and kept moving. The creek was bone-dry dusty, a narrow ditch of moonlight and thorn brush. Behind her, footsteps gained fast. Then a third sound. Different. A horse. She turned her head just enough to see him, Cole McAllister, coat-flapping rifle slung over his shoulder, riding hard along the ridge. His silhouette cut through the moonlight like an old ghost finally returned to flesh. Clayton raised his gun, but Cole dismounted before the horse stopped his boot, hitting dirt hard. He pulled the rifle from his back and aimed. I wouldn't, Cole said. Clayton froze. Snake Tattoo Man did not. He lunged toward Millie. A single warning shot cracked the air so close to the man's feet that he fell backward into the grass, scrambling like a coyote caught in daylight. Millie collapsed to her knees, gasping, bleeding from a scrape on her arm. Cole reached her, breathing heavy. He didn't speak right away, just helped her up, rough hands, trembling. I had to lead them away, she whispered. They were going to take Leah. His jaw clenched. You don't throw yourself to wolves, Millie. You would have. He looked at her, then really looked. I already did. he murmured. Long ago, and I buried what came after in the dirt. Millie didn't ask what he meant. The way his voice broke at the edges said more than words ever could. They didn't hear the second shot until they saw the smoke. Cole turned sharply. One of the men had fired again at them, but up toward the tree line where Silas and Fernandez had begun to approach. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was chaos. Elas had come running from the schoolhouse screaming, "They're gone, they're safe." The attackers scattered. Cole didn't pursue. He stood in the dust, eyes following the men as they vanished into the hills, and finally let his shoulders drop. Millie sat down beside him in the dirt. She could smell the sweat and gunpowder on his jacket, the blood drying on her knee, the fear still clinging to her ribs. He pulled out his handkerchief and offered it to her. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what? Forever letting it come to this?" Millie took the cloth and dabbed her face. "You didn't bring the storm, but you're the one standing in it now." He gave a half laugh. Not from joy, from knowing. The moon moved on. The wind returned. Somewhere behind them, Ruthie cried in Miss Dorothea's arms. Leah sat quiet beneath a tree, staring at the medallion around her neck. And Cole. He looked out across the land. Not to run, not to fight, just to see if he still belonged to it. And that in the West is how a man begins again. Not with a gun, not with vengeance, but with a girl who ran for her sisters. And a truth too long buried finally breaking the surface. The night air in Copper Creek didn't cool like it used to. Even the soil held onto the heat like it was clenching its fists underground. Cole McAllister stood by the fence line, eyes narrowed toward the northern ridge. There was something unnatural in the quiet. No owls, no coyotes, just the hush before a storm that didn't come with thunder. Then he heard it faint rhythmic wrong. Shovels, 4 of them, working in the dark. Silas Boone rode up slow, his shirt soaked through with sweat despite the hour. "I heard it too," he whispered, reins tight in one hand. "They're digging." Cole nodded once. They found the vein. The underground stream was older than the valley, older than Ward, older than Cole. Magdalena used to call it the pulse of the land. If it was rerouted, the well would dry in weeks. Chickens would die first, then the cattle, then everything that couldn't walk to the next town. "Let's go," Cole said, voice low and firm. They saddled up and rode with the wind. The ridge loomed a black shoulder beneath a heavy sky. As they crested the slope, they saw them 4 men in wide-brimmed hats, lanterns swinging from stakes, blades cutting through the earth like knives through ribs. Clayton Briggs looked up first. His mouth curled cruel. Well, well, the cowboys come to cry over dirt. Cole dismounted slow and silent. "Put those shovels down." Clayton laughed, a dry, mean thing. "Not unless you got a deed from God himself." Behind him, the trench was already 3 feet deep, water glistening at the bottom like veins freshly slit. "Walter Halen sends his regards," Clayton said, spitting on the dirt. "He says if you won't sell hell, take it. Quiet like. No fuss." Is this what it is now? Cole's voice was quieter than the night. "You steal from the dead, from their children." Clayton's grin tightened. "You don't own the rain, McAllister." Silas stepped beside Cole, lifting his shotgun a little higher. "We're not here to kill anyone," Cole said, "but we ain't leaving without filling that trench." Clayton's eyes flicked toward the workers. One of them, a boy barely 20, paused, uncertain. "We've got buys and buckets back at the ranch," Silas added. "One holler and the whole valley's out here by dawn." Clayton's lip twitched. "You think folks'll care that much about your dirt?" "No," Cole said, stepping closer. "They'll care about the way you dug it, in the dark, with no name on your back, like a coward." A tense silence fell. Then came a voice from behind the mesquite. "They ain't alone." Dorothea emerged, dragging a feed sack twice her size. Frank O'Reilly followed, carrying a coil of rope. Eli Briggs brought up the rear, holding a pitchfork and trembling like a branch. Clayton cursed under his breath. "You brought school teachers and newspaper men. What's next, altar boys?" Cole met his gaze. "No, just people tired of swallowing dust." The boy with the shovel dropped it. Then another. Soon only Clayton was holding a tool, and it wasn't for digging. "You got one chance to walk away," he growled. But Cole was already walking forward, step by step, not a hand on his holster, not even raising his voice. "You already burned my barn, Clayton. You tried to take the girls. You tried to buy me out like I was furniture in a widow's house. But I'm still here, still standing, and this land ain't just mine. It belongs to the promise I made when 3 children stood on my porch and said they had nowhere to go." Clayton's hand hovered over his revolver. Dorothea stepped up beside Cole. "You shoot him, and there'll be 10 more standing where he fell." Then, from the ridge behind them came a low murmur of voices. Lanterns, dozens of them, townsfolk, ranchers, folks who hadn't said 2 words to Cole in 10 years. Cole didn't look back. He didn't need to. Clayton's hand dropped. His jaw clenched. He threw his shovel down so hard it clanged off the rocks. "This ain't the end," he hissed. "No," Cole said, "it's the beginning." The townsfolk moved like water filling the trench, packing the soil, tying back the barrels Clayton's men had brought. It wasn't angry work. It was honest, sweaty, determined. When it was done, the ridge was quiet again. Just the sound of night insects and the water flowing undisturbed beneath their feet. Cole sat on the split-rail fence, wiping dirt from his hands. Eli came and sat beside him. "You didn't flinch," the boy said, eyes wide. Cole shook his head. "I've done too much of that already." Eli hesitated. "They'll come again. Halen's not done." Cole nodded slowly. "Then we'll still be here." From across the field, Leah's voice echoed through the night. She stood near Amelia and Ruthie, watching. Her hand was in Amelia's. The medallion Magdalena had left hung around her neck, catching the lantern light. She didn't call out to him. She didn't need to. She just nodded once, and Cole nodded back. It wasn't over, but they weren't alone. And sometimes that's the whole beginning of peace. The wind stirred the prairie grass as twilight melted into golden dusk. At the edge of the valley, Cole McAllister sat on the porch of his rebuilt barn, a whetstone in one hand and a small knife in the other. He wasn't sharpening out of necessity. It was just something to do with his hands, something that didn't tremble. Inside, the sound of quiet laughter drifted from the kitchen. Amelia was teaching Ruthie how to shape dough into stars, and Leah had taken to reading out loud, her voice steady but soft, like she was still testing the ground beneath her feet. It was the kind of evening Cole never thought he'd witness again, not after Magdalena, not after Clara, not after all the silence he'd buried himself beneath. He lowered the knife, let the whetstone rest on his knee. The knife had once belonged to Clara. He remembered her holding it in the firelight, slicing peaches, while the girls from the church sang on the back porch. Magdalena had been there once too, younger, braver, still full of dreams that hadn't soured yet. A shadow passed the edge of the field, slow and hunched like a wounded coyote. Cole rose before the dogs barked. Ward. His clothes were ragged, his beard wild, and his boots left trails of dust on the porch he once threatened to burn. He didn't knock. He just stood there squinting like the sun offended him. "I don't want to fight," Ward said. Cole didn't speak. "I just need a place to rest. One night. Folks won't rent me a room. They won't even sell me a crust of bread." His voice cracked not from sorrow, but from the dryness of pride crumbling. "You burned this place down," Cole said finally. "You tried to take 3 girls like they were cattle." Ward looked past him toward the house. "I lost everything. You had nothing to lose to begin with," Cole answered. "Only your decency, and you threw that out years ago." Ward's eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than me? You left Magdalena with a child in a grave. That little girl inside, she didn't know your name until a piece of paper told her." Cole didn't flinch. "She knows it now." They stood in silence. The cicadas hummed like old ghosts in the trees. Finally, Cole stepped aside. "There's a cot in the tool shed. You can sleep there, and you eat what's left when the girls are done." Ward looked as if he might argue, but the heat, the shame, the weight of being no one's man anymore. He nodded silent. Later, when the sun dipped and shadows crept over the fields, Leah stepped onto the porch, her book tucked under her arm. "Hay's here," she said. "Cole didn't lie." "I know." She looked at him the way Magdalena once did, without anger, but full of things she wouldn't say out loud. "I heard what he said to you," she added. "About you not being there, about Mom." Cole's jaw tightened. Then he looked at her, really looked, and found Clara's stillness in her gaze and Magdalena's fire in the way she refused to cry. "I was a coward," he said. "I buried the past and called it a mercy." But it wasn't mercy. It was fear dressed up in silence. Leah said nothing for a long while. "Then I kept thinking you'd explain it all one day." "You haven't." "Not really." "I don't have the right words," he said. "But I've got time if you've got patience." She nodded. "I'll try." Inside, Ruthie shouted that the cookies were burning. Cole chuckled. Leah didn't. She kept staring out into the dark where Ward had vanished. "You think he'll come back for something?" she asked. "No," Cole said. "He already took everything he thought mattered. Turns out what matters can't be stolen." She leaned against the porch rail close enough that their shoulders brushed. That small contact, unspoken, meant everything. Later that night, long after Ruthie and Amelia had fallen asleep and Leah curled on the couch with a half-read book, Cole walked out to the shed. Ward lay on the cot, face turned to the wall. He didn't stir when Cole entered, but a scrap of paper lay folded on the workbench beside a half-empty water jug. Cole opened it. "Magdalena owed me. I made it impossible to repay. I burned her barn. I tried to take her daughters. I failed. Ezekiel Ward." There was no apology, just confession. Cole folded the paper and slipped it into his breast pocket. It wouldn't be shown. Not to the town, not to the preacher. The only punishment that mattered had already come. No one wanted to remember him as anything but a warning. The next morning the shed was empty. No tracks, no sound. Just an open gate and a single unfinished boot print in the dirt. Cole didn't follow. Instead, he found Ruthie curled up in the rocking chair with her thumb in her mouth and Amelia mending a torn dress by the window. Leah was digging in the garden, planting zinnias and lavender. The medallion from Magdalena hung around her neck. He joined her in silence. "Why flowers?" he asked. She shrugged. "Because Mom never had a garden, and Clara did." He nodded. That made sense. As she dug, a small envelope tumbled from her apron. "It's a letter," she said, "for Mom. I wrote it weeks ago. You sending it?" he asked. She shook her head. "There's no place to send it." Cole touched his chest. "Then keep it here." She looked at him and for the first time smiled without a trace of sadness. Behind them, Ruthie yelled that breakfast was burning again, and Amelia cursed in the kitchen like a small outlaw. Cole laughed. The porch creaked beneath their steps as they walked back together, father and daughter, not by blood alone, but by the quiet choice made under a blistering sun. Inside the house, the scent of scorched biscuits drifted into sunlight, and for the first time in years, home didn't just mean shelter. It meant someone waiting, someone choosing to stay, someone who finally understood that a house is not just a roof. It's a promise kept.